Turkey is reviving its efforts in the Jamal Khashoggi murder investigation. Police have searched 2 villas that belong to a Saudi citizen. But will it make any difference? And can Ankara succeed in its push for an international investigation? This is Inside Story. Hello, welcome to the programme. I'm Adrian Finighan. It's been nearly 2 months now since the journalist Jamal Khashoggi walked into the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. His murder at the hands of a 15-member hit squad has put Saudi Arabia under an international spotlight. Its embattled crown prince, who's been accused of ordering the killing, is on a tour of regional countries before heading to Argentina for the G20 summit. But Turkey wants to make sure the case doesn't disappear from the world's attention. Its investigators launched a search of 2 villas outside Istanbul on Monday. They say they're owned by a Saudi businessman who's close to the Crown Prince. We'll bring in our guest in just a moment, but first, Al Jazeera's Tony Bertley has more on the Turkish investigation.
The search centred on a large villa near the town of Yalova, an hour's drive south of Istanbul. The 40-strong team, including police with sniffer dogs, security forces and forensic investigators, spent all Monday at the villa, which is said to be owned by a rich Saudi businessman. Turkish media reported that he has links to Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Portraits of the Saudi king and Crown Prince could be seen hanging in the hallway. Turkish investigators were acting on phone records of calls made from the Saudi consulate in Istanbul before Jamal Khashoggi was murdered. One is said to have been made to the villa by a Saudi national. He's been named as Lieutenant Colonel Mansour Othman Abu Hussein, who was a member of the so-called hit squad which carried out the killing. It's thought that Colonel Abu Hussein is in the Saudi Civil Defence Force and has served the Crown Prince. The Turkish prosecutor has issued a statement saying the call was made a day before the killing and it was to discuss either how to hide or destroy Mr. Khashoggi's body. The search included the surrounding area and a neighbouring villa, which is also owned by a Saudi national. Neither of the owners was present. Fire services drained 2 wells before the forensic team took away samples. There are 2 main theories about what happened to Mr. Khashoggi's body. Either it was dismembered and dissolved in acid in the consulate, or his remains were taken away in black suitcases purchased by Saudi officials on the morning of the murder. They were then either disposed of in Turkey or flown to Saudi Arabia under diplomatic privilege. Only the killers know the answer, and they are in Saudi Arabia. If this search fails to produce any significant evidence about the whereabouts of Mr. Khashoggi's body, it's difficult to see where this investigation goes from here without meaningful Saudi cooperation, which, for some reason, it's still refusing to give.
Bu talimatı kim verdi? Arkasında kim var?
Saudi authorities are investigating with the perpetrators of the crime, and they must hand them over to us so that we can investigate them ourselves and know who the local collaborator or collaborators are and who gave the orders to carry out the crime. Since all these questions are still unanswered, calls from around the world and international organizations are getting louder to open an international investigation into this crime.
Saudi Arabia and Mohammed bin Salman, though, are moving on, doing business and seeing friends. It's his first foreign trip since the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. And the question being asked is, if he wasn't the architect of this killing, then why is he not finding out who was? Tony Bertley, Al Jazeera, Yalova, Turkey.
Let's bring in our guests for today's discussion. From Istanbul, we're joined by Professor of History at Ibn Haldun University, Vehbi Baysan. From Bucharest, Matthew Bryza, Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council and a former US Ambassador. And from Lancaster in the UK, Simon Mabon, a Senior Lecturer in International Relations at Lancaster University. Welcome, gentlemen. Good to have you with us. Professor Baysan, let's start with you. Why is Turkey so determined to seek justice for Jamal Khashoggi in its own courts or through an international investigation led by the UN, and to keep up the pressure on Saudi Arabia and its Crown Prince?
Well, first of all, this, the unfortunate and awful thing had happened in Turkish soil, actually in world's capital in Istanbul, although it's not a political capital, but it drew a lot of attention. And this gentleman was known to Turkish administration, I mean the Khashoggi, and he had friends and acquaintances. So Turkey is determined to follow it up because it's a hideous crime and there are a lot of details emerging. But as far as the Turkish public concerned, Jamal Khashoggi was invited to the consulate in Istanbul and he entered but never came out. So Turkey is determined to find out what had happened, although I'm sure there are a lot of other details that not has been revealed. But also that actually they want to find out the truth, what had happened. So far, nothing much progress, and all we know is that yesterday, very close to Istanbul, on the other side of Marmara Sea, they were searching two villas,
yeah. Professor, you
houses.
Professor, you think that there's more evidence that's yet to come to light, is that right?
Well, that is my guess. Definitely, Turkish authorities may know more because they raided two houses. I mean, to begin with, that in order to start a crime or murder investigation, you need to have the body somewhere, or at least you should know that what had happened. So far, I mean, in general speaking, the public, even international community, we don't have much. We know some tappings, some recordings, etc. But the rest is anyone's guess. So Turkey is really determined to find out.
Matthew Bryza, Ambassador, will there come a point when Turkey has to say, OK, we've done all we can here for the sake of relations with our allies, we've got to put this to bed and move on? Or is Turkey not going to let this go? And if so, why not?
Well, I think, as the professor said, Turkey's preference would be to get to the bottom of this for just reasons of humanity and as a way to also strengthen Turkey's reputation so people know Turkey is on the side of right. But I think there just logically does come an end in the line of the detailed information that has been leaked quite skillfully from a diplomatic perspective by the Turkish government for the last month or so. There hasn't been any dramatic information released recently. And I think that, yesterday's search of this villa outside of Istanbul maybe is an attempt to get some more information that could be useful ammunition in this attempt by Turkey to set the record straight. I think Turkey is also negotiating a bit with both Washington and with Riyadh, but showing it's had this information and then having some discussions behind the scenes, one of which is about to take place, I think, between Presidents Bush and Erdogan at the G20 summit in Buenos Aires.
President Trump, you mean? We'll come on to the G20 meeting in just a few moments. Simon Mabon in Lancaster, what is Turkey's end game here? The US president has made it clear, as far as he's concerned, that the Crown Prince had nothing to do with the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. Is this something personal between Erdogan and Mohammed bin Salman, or is it more to do with regional influence?
I think there's every possibility that there is a personal dimension to it, but I don't think there needs to be a personal dimension. I think if you're studying the Middle East, you're studying Middle Eastern politics, one of the first books that you read is called Dialogues in Arab Politics by Michael Barnett. And what Barnett does is he tells the story of how at certain points, certain incidents, the actors involved have the opportunity to rework, reconceptualize, reorder international relations. And I think that's exactly what this moment is. What Turkey is doing, what President Erdogan is doing, is sensing that the Khashoggi affair has given him the opportunity to redefine a relationship between Ankara, Washington and Riyadh that has had Turkey as the third player in a relationship that dates back to the 1950s. And I think Turkey, particularly under Erdogan, is wanting to reassert itself on the regional stage. And what I think many in Turkey are doing is sensing that this is an opportunity to do that. So leaving aside any personal animosity, it's an opportunity for Turkey.
Professor Baysan in Istanbul, can Ankara, do you think, succeed in its demand for an international investigation? What needs to happen politically to bring that to fruition?
Well, first of all, now Istanbul, the capital of a lot of the dissidents from Middle East, namely from Egypt, from Syria. So Turkey is determined to actually make sure that it's a safe place for all these people. So therefore, from my point of view, this investigation is very, very important. But also the deteriorating relations, Turkish-Saudi relations, actually had a momentum when the king called Mr. Erdogan about this case. So we raised our hopes that the two countries would rebuild their relations and take it further. So that also has that element. And also I'm very much hopeful that at the probably G20 summit that Mr. Erdogan would meet maybe the prince, and then probably they would discuss further details and to bring this whole thing into an end. But I very much doubt if Saudi Arabia holds any more details. I don't know, at least probably they know whereabouts of the body. And so Turkey, that's why, is going to press ahead until the bottom of it. So and it's going to keep it, in my opinion, for a while, at least on the international community's attention.
Ambassador Bryza, can you foresee circumstances in which Saudi Arabia could be persuaded to meaningfully cooperate with either Turkey's own investigation or an international UN-led investigation? And if so, who'll do the persuading?
Well, the answer to that question depends entirely on whether or not the Crown Prince is guilty. If he is indeed the one who ordered this, then there's no chance in the world Saudi Arabia will cooperate unless under extreme duress and under conditions that are unforeseeable at this point. But to answer the sort of hypothetical question, were there to be an international investigation, were Turkey to keep pressing the case, I don't think you could ever see one under UN auspices, one that would be approved by the UN Security Council, because the US will oppose that. And to tell you the truth, Russia may oppose such an investigation as well for a number of reasons. One being Russia is happy to step in and shore up its ties with Saudi Arabia while the Crown Prince is feeling vulnerable. So I don't think there could be a UN investigation. Whether there could be an investigation under the International Court of Justice, that's another question, or maybe under some other international body that would be broadly enough representational to garner a sense of legitimacy. But I don't see it happening under the United Nations system.
OK. Turkey's foreign minister says that President Trump's assessment of the CIA's findings are wrong. Ambassador, how far do you think Turkey is willing to push this with the US? What is President Erdogan looking to get out of the Trump administration?
Well, that was quite a dramatic statement by Foreign Minister Çavuşoğlu, and you haven't seen that reiterated since he made that initial statement, because it's dramatic to call out the U.S. president and essentially say the U.S. president's not telling the truth or outright lying. So I think what will happen in Ankara is that President Erdogan and his team are going to wait and see how much pressure comes on President Bush by the Congress, especially when the new House of Representatives convenes under the control of the Democratic Party come January. What would Erdogan want out of this? Well, there are several difficult issues on the U.S.-Turkey agenda, unresolved problems. There's U.S. cooperation with Kurdish militias that Turkey views as a terrorist organization, the YPG. Turkey wants that to end. The United States would like to see Turkey stop shelling those YPG forces in Syria. There's also the issue of a state bank, Halkbank, whose vice president was convicted of money laundering and helping to evade Iran sanctions. Turkey would like to see the criminal case against Halkbank dropped. But then finally, there's the issue of issues, which is the residency in the United States, in the state of Pennsylvania, of Fethullah Gülen, whom Turkey widely believes masterminded the 2016 coup attempt. And I will add, I don't know a single Turkish person who disagrees with the notion that Gülen indeed did mastermind that attack. So I think President Erdogan is looking for some progress on any of those issues.
Simon Mabon in Lancaster, what do you think the chances are then of President Erdogan managing to twist the arm of President Trump, who's declared his support, of course, for the Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman?
They're probably not very likely, to be honest. But just before getting into that, I just want to stress that let's not forget, Turkey is one of the states most responsible for detaining journalists and opposition movements across the world. Turkey has a long track record of doing so. And so to kind of frame this as the protection of a journalist, I think misses a great deal of the point here. This is a political issue that is being used by Ankara as a means of exerting more pressure on Washington and Riyadh. Now, as to whether they can do it or not, I don't think Mr. Trump will budge. He's been pretty steadfast in his view of Saudi Arabia, his view of the Crown Prince, and he's put all of his faith in the ability of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to counter Iran, not only in Syria, but in Yemen and across the Middle East. Now, we've seen there have been a number of high-profile strategic mistakes made by the Crown Prince, but even so, that hasn't come with a strong public rebuke from Washington as yet. So I think the idea that Ankara can exert pressure on Trump to get him to drop the Crown Prince, I think it's highly, highly unlikely at this point.
Professor Baysan, what do you have to say in response to what Simon Mabon was saying there? Do you agree with his assessment of Turkey's political motives here?
Well, that's most argued, actually, even in Turkey. But as I said, I think Turkey wants to safeguard its soil, at least like, as I said, in Istanbul, and doesn't want this case to be closed that easily, because the Trump himself made this written announcement last Tuesday. In fact, there was a very striking sentence there. It says, probably we will never, it was in italics, never know what had happened, etc. So this is not just a statement. It's basically they're saying to people, just drop it out. So that seems infuriated Turkey. So I do not think Turkey really is seeking revenge from Saudi Arabia. Probably they're not going to gain much out of it. But it is very important for Turkey. So, I mean, I don't know historically if we have any other case similar to this, that, you know, somebody in Turkish soil just entered the consulate and then disappeared. So I think also Turkish administration, and namely, particularly Mr. Erdogan, making it a kind of a personal issue, because this is not really easy to swallow, and probably they're thinking that if we let it go, then we never know what's next and who does what. So I think that's why it's important for Turkey to clear this and find out the truth. And at the same time, probably they want to make a little bit of make others understand, especially the Saudis, and if at all Prince behind it, that this is not an easy task, that what they did is not really something they should be doing in Turkey.
Matthew Bryza, I'll give you a brief moment to respond to that, if you would, and then I want to come on to ask you about the G20.
Sure. I don't think there's any chance at all that President Trump is going to budge. I agree. And I don't think President Erdogan expects that President Trump is going to budge. I think what President Erdogan is doing is looking for something in return for letting the issue go once there's no more information to be leaked. And I'd just like to add, as a former U.S. official, and for 23 years, I was shocked and disappointed beyond expression at what President Trump said in his statement. He actually said, maybe the Crown Prince did it, maybe he didn't. Yes, as the professor was saying, we'll never know. But we have all these important business interests on the table and arms sales. That is remarkable for me to hear from a U.S. president. You know, we were all trained in the Foreign Service and in university and even elementary school that the U.S. cares about certain values in the world as well as strategic interests. And this is the first time I've ever heard a U.S. president so blatantly abandon that mission that Americans like to feel they have to do something good in the world.
Ambassador, you raised earlier the issue of the G20 here. Turkey's foreign minister said that Mohammed bin Salman has asked to meet with Turkey's President Erdogan at the G20. What do you make of that? Why would the Crown Prince want to meet his accuser, the man who's stirring up so much trouble for him both at home and abroad?
Yeah, that's a great question. My guess is perhaps Washington and Riyadh have been collaborating on a way to de-escalate. We know that Secretary Pompeo visited Riyadh as well as Ankara in the midst of all this. Secretary Pompeo didn't want to listen to the tape that the Turks had that they played for the CIA director. There have been some stories, speculation that maybe Washington and Riyadh are working together to make the cover story stick. So perhaps the White House suggested to Crown Prince, asked to see President Erdogan, make up somehow, try to de-escalate the tension, and by the way, we've got your back, so do the best job you can to get us all out of this mess. And I think that's tragic for everybody, except probably the Crown Prince.
Simon Mabon, what do you think the chances of that meeting actually happening are?
I think, first of all, we've got to figure out if the Crown Prince is going to go to the G20. There are reports coming out this morning that Human Rights Watch is placing pressure on Argentinian prosecutors to arrest the Crown Prince for his involvement in not only the Khashoggi affair, but in the war in Yemen. And I think that if there is any doubt whatsoever, if there is any fear in the Crown Prince's mind, then he will decide not to make that trip. But if he does, then I think it would be very interesting for Mr. Erdogan and the Crown Prince to meet. I think that there is a lot for the two states to discuss, not least with regard to the Khashoggi affair and how to move beyond it, but also how to deal with a region where the two are heavily involved. The two have aspirations about the ordering of the region, and they've not always seen eye to eye. So I think, going back to my very first answer about redrawing space, this is about an existential vision of the Middle East that's at stake here. So that conversation is going to be wide-ranging and incredibly intense.
And if that meeting actually goes ahead, as you said, it's still doubtful as to whether... I mean, he says he intends to go to the G20 in Argentina, but with Argentina being asked to investigate him for possible war crimes in Yemen under universal jurisdiction, it's doubtful whether he will risk going. But would Mohammed bin Salman, if that meeting takes place, be able to persuade President Erdogan of his innocence in the Khashoggi affair, or at least to quieten the allegations against him personally?
I guess it depends what those tapes say, those tapes that we've heard so much about but haven't yet heard, or at least I've not been privy to. And I guess depending on what those tapes say will determine whether the Crown Prince is able to try and convince Mr. Erdogan of his innocence. I think a great many people are of the opinion that this type of action could not have occurred under sort of the leadership of key Saudi officials without his tutelage. And so I think that there is that perception that is incredibly difficult to erode, particularly if there is some evidence of something in the tapes, let's say some kind of smoking gun. So I think it's going to be an incredibly difficult task for the Crown Prince. But as the ambassador said, perhaps if there is some kind of coordination between Riyadh and Washington, then we could see some kind of burgeoning rapprochement. But I think it will take some quite seismic diplomatic efforts.
Professor Baysan, do you agree with that assessment? What is Turkey looking to get out of this meeting at the G20 with the Saudi Crown Prince, if indeed it goes ahead? I mean, is it looking for some sort of rapprochement? Is it looking for a way to de-escalate this situation?
Well, I don't think Turkey interested in keeping it always escalated and keeping also our current affairs busy with this subject. A lot of people really upset about, I'm sure, the Saudi citizens as well back in that country. So yes, indeed, but Turkey trying to find solution. But at the same time, there is in a way like a criminal case in hand. And that Erdogan also responsible, making some public explanation about it, on if they agreed on what. So I think this would serve for a couple of corners. One is that, hopefully he would ask more cooperation from the Saudi side, at least to have like a viable exit strategy for this issue. I don't know what would that be. And number two, I think Turkey at the highest level also willing to reestablish the relations and play a positive role in Syria, and as well as other economic projects in the region, or at least personally, I think, and always promote this in Turkish televisions whenever I appear. So I think that meeting can prove something positive, or else, yeah. I think if Saudi doesn't offer much help in this case, it may turn again against them. But the Trump's case, I think what has been said in this program is absolutely true. Okay. Turkey is really annoyed and sees this PYD, the Kurdish armed forces at its borders, very dangerous to their national security.
Okay. There, I'm afraid, gentlemen, we must end our discussion. We're out of time. Thank you to you all, Vehbi Baysan, Matthew Bryza and Simon Mabon. As always, thank you for watching. Don't forget, you can see the programme at any time just by going to the website at aljazeera.com. For further discussion, join us at our Facebook page. You'll find that at facebook.com/AJ Inside Story, or you can join the conversation on Twitter, our handle @AJ Inside Story. From me, Adrian Finighan, and the whole team here in Doha. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again. Bye for now.